on Chronicle.
Like, you know it happened to you, so you fight for you.
A fight for survival.
So I felt completely alone.
Victims of sexual assault, victimized again.
There are many reasons why the system is failing.
A fight for justice.
We owe it to them to deliver them justice.
House Bill 3309.
We investigate the push for change.
Were it not for WYFF and its investigative team, I don't think seriously we would be at this point.
Survivors left without answers.
I'm trying to just live, and I'm trying to survive.
Now on Chronicle, WYFF News 4 investigates surviving sexual assault.
Welcome to Chronicle. I'm Jane Robelo. In a WYFF News 4 investigation, we revealed thousands of untested rape kits throughout South Carolina. Those kits never analyzed in a crime lab, each one belonging to a survivor waiting for answers.
It's like when you're telling yourself, okay, well, you know, this was my fault, or I'm not worth it, or I'm disgusting, or this and that. Them not doing anything about it just adds to that.
In April, there were 1,780 untested rape kits on law enforcement shelves. More agencies came forward after our reporting. Dozens more untested kits were revealed. Still, nearly 200 agencies have not reported their data. In May, legislators used our work to pass a rape kit tracking bill through South Carolina's House. It will go to the Senate in 2020 and would be the first piece of reform around sexual assault in the state, giving survivors the ability to know where their evidence is at all times. After the investigation, Greenville County Council's chairman committed to support the addition of DNA analysts at the local lab. That funding now approved in the upcoming budget. But advocates say there's more work to do. Through our investigation, we also found survivors are doing just that, surviving the attack, surviving a justice system that often fails them, surviving constant obstacles in their push for change. Amanda Crawford starts our story of survival.
Nothing about surviving a sexual assault is easy.
I didn't report my crime immediately.
Even after a report, more frustration.
Because it looked like nobody was doing anything.
And a case dropped.
And then nothing. Nothingness. And you're forgotten.
Evidence never tested.
I'm just evidence collected sitting somewhere. So, yeah. My t-shirt, my shorts, my panties, my sports bra I was wearing, everything. Just bagged somewhere sitting. Couldn't tell you where, though.
Evidence destroyed.
He had terrible news for me, and he was devastated to learn that mine and my friends' kits had been destroyed. My world just sort of, the black hole came up around me again.
In some cases, an arrest.
While we can't reverse what happened, but we can tell you that we got the suspect. That's a pretty powerful thing.
But even then, surviving the justice system can take a toll.
And so you have to have a victim who is willing to participate in the criminal justice system to go and help us seek justice.
The criminal justice system is designed to protect people's rights, and the accused has a right to confront their accuser. And it's a necessary evil, but it's part of our system.
And with that, the victim ultimately would have to testify and relive one of the most difficult situations they've ever endured. And sometimes many victims are just don't have the strength to go through, and rightfully so, because it is such a difficult process.
Even when all goes according to plan and there's a guilty verdict here in court, there's still no celebration.
And so it really is just a sigh of relief that we got justice and some solace for this particular victim, and that hopefully that will give them the strength to completely heal and become a true survivor.
Advocates tell us the system is broken. Sexual assault kits go untested. Cases go uninvestigated. Criminals go free.
So as a forensic nurse,
there are people like Dr. Julie Valentine who know what it takes to bring change to that broken system.
Getting policymakers involved is critically important.
Valentine is a sexual assault examiner.
Again, those survivor voices.
And advocate for policy reform.
So it sounds like for South Carolina, the idea of legislating a tracking system is a really great place to start.
House Bill 3309.
A rape kit tracking system that is now halfway through the state's legislature.
In the event that this legislation passes, we will have a tracking system that will keep you updated on the status of your rape kit.
But even if it becomes law, there's more reform to fight for.
I work with these survivors. I see what happens to their lives after they go through these experiences. And it's too much of a toll on our society. It destroys people. We have to work together.
Together with advocates at the Julie Valentine Center.
And that we are going to see this through and see the real beginnings of rape kit reform in South Carolina.
And survivors like Evelyn Mitchell.
So now I feel like we're even more prepared than ever. I feel like this momentum that we've gained is so empowering.
Research shows 1 of every 1,000 people is sexually assaulted each year in America. We also know that 3 out of every 4 attacks will not be reported to police. There are many reasons that people choose to stay silent. We spoke to one survivor about the challenges of speaking up. Here again, Amanda Crawford.
Being raped, it's like a piece of you dies, and then everybody else wants you to get over it.
A piece Allie will never get back. 1 year ago, the man she was dating attacked her.
He leaned over to kiss me and grabbed the back of my head and shook me, and the attack escalated from there.
Allie fought back, but he was stronger. Afterward, she was scared. It's why she asked us not to use her real name.
I wanted to think that it was a dream just like anybody else, and it sounds cliche, but you don't want to think this just happened to me. And so I didn't come forward right away. And that's something I have to live with.
It's something many victims do.
Or one of the main reasons that it's so difficult is that it's such a personal assault on the individual.
Shauna Galloway is the director of the Julie Valentine Center. She said another reason is victim blaming.
And that in and of itself holds so much challenge. That fear, that responsibility, that shame, the embarrassment.
Allie says that's what happened to her. She reported the attack 5 days after it happened.
It was from the beginning, well, what took you so long? Why did you wait? Why, if you thought you were raped, why didn't you come forward immediately?
Detectives asked about her clothing and how much she'd had to drink.
Feeling blamed from the very beginning was almost like you could feel it, like you're on a spiral. And then it just gets faster and faster.
Allie also hesitated to report her attack to officials because she didn't want to be part of a staggering number. She knew the figures from the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. Every year in the U.S., almost 300,000 people are sexually assaulted. Most will never get justice.
There's a misconception that when you report your crime, that these heroes are going to come out of the woodwork and they're going to save you and they're going to fix it. And they're going to lock somebody up immediately, and they don't.
The man who raped Allie was never charged. Investigators told her there wasn't enough evidence.
Now he gets to live life every day. And every day I get to wake up knowing that this happened to me, and he's living free completely.
Allie says she can't leave her house without fear overwhelming her.
Even if it's far off, I scan a parking lot to make sure that their car's not there. And that is prison. I might not have a cage around me, but I'm in prison because someone else is free. That shouldn't be.
She says that attack changed her forever.
I'm trying to just live, and I'm trying to survive. And I'm a lot stronger person than I was back then.
She chose the name Allie for us to use. It makes her think of an ally, someone survivors have on their side. She shares her story now, hoping others come forward, report their rape, and fight for the justice she never got.
Just surround yourself with the people who love you and believe you and just love yourself and take care of yourself. That's what you need to do.
Allie tells us the first thing that she would say to a survivor who has just been attacked, let's go to the hospital. There's no time limit on when you have to have a sexual assault kit done. DNA can still be collected days after an attack. The nationally accepted best practice is to collect evidence within 5 days.
It's just I don't know, it's a terrible process. It's important to do it, of course, but it's just heartbreaking.
The key to justice is often on the survivor after an attack. When Chronicle returns, the crucial step of performing a rape kit and why it can be so difficult for the victim.
It's invasive. It makes you feel vulnerable all over again. This is what victims of sexual assault shared with us about the process of collecting evidence. Their body is the crime scene where that collection takes place. The evidence goes into a rape kit to help investigators identify the attacker. For many victims, it is a difficult but necessary first step towards seeking justice.
And he told me that if I told anyone, that he would kill my family and that he would hunt me down.
Sarah was the victim of a brutal sexual assault at the hand of a stranger.
I thought at that point that he was going to kill me. Like, all I could see was my kid, my husband, my family. Like, oh my God, they're going to find me in a parking lot, dead.
But she did survive, and while she chooses to keep her identity private, she defied her attacker's threat, had a rape kit performed, and reported her assault.
One of the key things that needs to happen is they need to go to the hospital, they need to meet with one of the SANE nurses and get one of those kits processed. It's the first step in the investigation. We've got to get that evidence.
When these victims present to the ER, it is literally the worst day of their lives.
Sexual assault nurse examiners, SANE nurses, are medically and legally trained to collect this evidence.
Having a SANE nurse means that healing can begin a little bit sooner, giving them back some dignity, some respect, but more importantly, control, which is one of the things that they need the most in this time.
But the procedure is invasive and can take up to 6 hours to perform. Evidence is collected, swabbed, and photographed, and the victim's body is the crime scene.
That part was really difficult because you don't want to be touched.
Sarah did receive support during her rape kit exam, a victim advocate with the Julie Valentine Center, a nonprofit which provides confidential support services to survivors of sexual assault, stayed with her through the entire process, offering emotional support and direction.
And there was a Julie Valentine representative at my side. She was there from the moment I opened my eyes, and she's a really nice lady.
They often come to the emergency room alone. So to have someone who's truly in their corner to provide support during that forensic exam, it can be an incredible comfort to clients.
Those victim advocates commit a lot of time and energy and effort into that work. They complete a 29-hour course before they can go out to the emergency room or answer a call.
Advocates are also pushing to improve how survivors of sexual assault are treated in South Carolina.
The period after a sexual assault is so traumatic for a sexual assault survivor.
Representative Mandy Powers-Norrell introduced a dozen bills in the South Carolina legislature that would in some way reform the legal system surrounding sexual assault. One of those bills spells out exactly how a survivor should be treated when an attack is reported.
The Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights allows them to have a victim's advocate with them of the gender of their choosing, and that person would be assigned to them for every step of the process.
Representative Norrell's bills are still in committee. Her goal is to make survivors more comfortable in reporting crimes to law enforcement and more confident with the importance of getting to a hospital to get a rape kit done.
And even though you know what she's doing is supposed to help you at the moment, you don't realize how important it is.
It does make it less likely that the victim would have to testify. It does put the case in such a strength that there's more weight on the suspect to plead guilty.
In Sarah's case, the rape kit helped get a conviction. The analysis from the kit confirmed the identity of her attacker. That doesn't always happen. But when DNA found in the evidence is collected, it's entered into a national database that may help solve future crimes.
DNA evidence is helping bring justice to survivors of sexual assault across the state.
Really, we're letting the science talk.
It's also bogging down the system. Why the search for answers is a slow one, when Chronicle returns.
It's the place where evidence becomes answers, the place where crimes are solved, the place where suspects are exonerated. But it's also the place that, without more manpower, more money, and more attention, the wait for justice will last the longest. Nigel Robertson takes us into DNA crime labs in the Carolinas.
We are always leaving DNA behind.
It's a simple fact that makes what Brian Browning does crucial to solving crimes. He is a DNA analyst at Greenville County's crime lab.
The reason there's two is one is from mom and one is from dad.
It's up to law enforcement to bring sexual assault kits to the lab. But once it's there, it's Browning's job to figure out what the evidence says. He knows the process, and he knows it can take a long time.
Our standard turnaround, once the kit is in our property and evidence room and then brought here into the DNA lab, is about 8 months.
Let that sink in. Think about what that means for a survivor of rape.
8 to 10 months turnaround.
A case can be prioritized. If it's believed the community is in danger or the victim is a child, evidence can go to the front of the line.
The actual work necessary can be done within weeks.
Our investigation found no law enforcement agency has a larger backlog of untested rape kits than the Greenville County Sheriff's Office. More than 500 of them, and more than the local lab could handle if they all had to be tested.
It's just a number that's beyond our capacity.
It would be up to the state's crime lab in Columbia to help. Major Todd Huey is the director there.
The complexity of the kits and what's contained in a sexual assault kit, it is one of the most complex analyses we perform.
The group of scientists that process sexual assault kits in Columbia is larger than any other team in the lab. The shift in attention came after a 2016 national symposium on policymaking.
We, for the first time, changed our model within the laboratory to assign a certain number of serologists, a certain number of DNA analysts, to basically an internal task force that works nothing but sexual assault kits.
There are more than 800 sexual assault cases waiting to be processed at the lab. A new facility set to open in 2021 promises to improve workflow and reduce turnaround time.
That's what we're planning and building for. Having those efficiencies that we will be able to see should translate into quicker turnaround times and hopefully increase capacity to do more cases.
In the meantime, they'll keep working to help provide answers wherever they're needed.
And we will work nights and weekends on a regular basis to see that we can provide that investigative lead, if possible, to them in a very timely manner.
Forensic scientists in North Carolina State Crime Lab tell us they've already seen an evolution when it comes to getting results.
Prior to the automation coming into play, there was a lot more hands-on analysis that had to be completed, and that took significant amounts of time. We were still processing multiple cases, however, we never seemed to get ahead. We're getting to the point that I believe that we are going to play a role in investigations versus giving results 2 to 3 years later.
And they know the work they're doing is helping people survive.
Every time we work a case and we have a completion, the profiles that we generate and the quality of work that we have been generated, at the end of the day, this is why we signed up for this job.
The Greenville County Council approved the hiring of 2 new DNA analysts for the lab over the next 2 years. Scientists there tell us those additional employees will help ensure that turnaround time doesn't grow as the demand for testing more kits does.
I just assume like when you get a kit that it just immediately gets tested.
From county to county, from one agency to the next, our investigation found rape kits are handled differently after they're done. Why one local agency decided to start processing every kit. Coming up on Chronicle.
There are thousands of untested rape kits in South Carolina. How those rape kits are handled can vary from county to county. We asked every sheriff's office in the state for their policies surrounding these cases. And what we learned is they're all different. Advocates tell Amanda Crawford that's a big problem.
If at all possible, on a weekly basis, usually within 1 to 2 weeks, within 10 to 14 days. 3 different agencies, 3 different policies. 3 different timelines to get a rape kit to the crime lab.
It's really appalling, actually, when you stop and think about it, that every department in a state could have a different policy on handling something so important as rape kit evidence.
The Joyful Heart Foundation runs the website End the Backlog. The push is for statewide reform across the country to get untested rape kits tested.
In Detroit, they took 10,000 rape kits off the shelf. They tested them, and they found 800 serial offenders that had committed crimes in 40 states and Washington, D.C.
If we think that this is a viable case, and we get our DNA kits to SLED as soon as possible.
In Pickens County, we learned why some rape kits are destroyed before they're ever tested.
Very emotional on both sides, and especially if you're falsely accused. So if we get into a case and it is not a rape as we thought to start with, we have an obligation to make sure that the person is cleared, the innocent party is cleared. When we do have a true sexual assault, we go after it quick and get our evidence to SLED as quick as we can. That's a top priority for us.
In 2018, the Greenville County Sheriff's Office made a change in policy to test every kit collected. Captain James Beaver tells us that required a new mindset.
Once upon a time, we would only submit DNA or submit the sexual assault kits when we didn't have a suspect and when it was an unknown. Now we submit them all. We submit all of our kits, and we do that for that very purpose so that we can establish connections between cases and possibly identify an offender in their activity over the course of time.
The Greenville County policy is one of few to detail how anonymous kits should be handled. This evidence belongs to survivors who aren't ready to open a case.
They want the opportunity for their evidence to be collected and preserved.
State law dictates the anonymous rape kits are kept at least 1 year. We asked Greenville County about that law and learned their kits are stored indefinitely for now.
I don't want to get rid of any of them. I don't care what state law says. I want to maintain them simply because there's a possibility that there's somebody out there who has committed multiple rapes.
At this point, anonymous kits aren't analyzed in Greenville County or at the state level until the survivor decides to pursue justice.
In 2013, 88% of rape kits the Greenville County Sheriff's Office collected were left untested. By 2018, that figure dropped to 14% and is even lower this year. It's data we will continue to track as the agency works to have all kits tested.
Every layer of the criminal justice system can present a new challenge for a survivor.
But I don't understand this system. I don't get it.
Next on Chronicle, why the people charged with bringing peace of mind say justice is so difficult to come by.
In 2017, students at South Carolina colleges and universities reported 80 on-campus rapes. At least that's the number the schools gave the federal government. Here in the upstate, Furman University reported 8. Wofford and Clemson, 7 cases each. Madeline Hackett learned a survivor's pursuit of justice at school can prove to be a student's toughest test.
I went to FUPO and I told them that I had been sexually assaulted.
This Furman freshman said someone filmed her during sex.
Everything happened in a way that I never imagined. And then I just wish that they handled it right.
Furman graduate Haley Clevenger says she was raped on campus.
I was really scared. I started barricading my door to sleep at night.
She said she felt pressured to sign this document. She believed it meant she couldn't pursue criminal prosecution and that Furman would handle the investigation.
If you're going to report it, go straight to the Greenville Police Department. Do not report it to the Furman Police.
Even a Furman professor believes it's a flawed process internally.
The plan is just to come to the quickest possible resolution as they can get. And if that involves, stepping on someone's rights or ignoring other serious misconduct, then they're going to do that.
We went to Furman with each of these cases. Each time the school refused an interview, giving us similar statements instead. That they care deeply about providing a safe and welcoming community for students and take very seriously any and all claims of sexual misconduct. But Furman isn't the only school where students came to us with issues. Clemson senior Bradley Hieronymus says he was sexually assaulted by his professor.
I wanted to go here my whole life.
and then this happens.
This 130-page lawsuit takes aim at Clemson's Title IX process, saying the school failed to provide any corrective measure for Bradley and the trauma he endured.
The most disturbing thing as a parent, not something you expect from your male child to have to go through at college.
Clemson would not discuss this specific case with us. However, they did agree to sit down to help us better understand the school's Title IX process.
You don't go off to college thinking that this is what's going to happen to you.
Alicia Smith is Clemson's Title IX coordinator.
I think it's important that if we can show that students, faculty, or staff are comfortable reporting these matters because they believe and feel like the process will listen, believe them, follow through. It may not always turn out the way that they're hoping, but as long as we're listening, doing our part, and proceeding, I think that's the key.
She acknowledges there's always room for improvement in guiding survivors through the process. She called it long, emotional, and stressful.
We try to make sure that they know that up front and not try to hide any of that because it's very difficult as it is. And so I think the more we can be honest and transparent about the process, the more helpful it is.
Representative Mandy Powers-Norrell wrote legislation that would give amnesty to students who report sexual assaults on college campuses.
A lot of times, we've found that students are very reluctant to report sexual assault, whether they are a witness to sexual assault or the victim of sexual assault, because they may have engaged in underage drinking or some kind of drug use that would get them suspended from school or cause them a violation of the honor code.
The Title IX process is an added layer for college students most survivors don't have to navigate. Their pursuit of justice will also involve law enforcement.
What I want to make sure of is that we do everything right so that when we get to the end of this case, if there's a potential for prosecution, that we're successful.
Clemson University Police Chief Greg Mullen admits there are more sexual assaults on campus than get reported.
And I look at the reports same reports that you do, and the numbers are very low. And I've been around long enough to know that that's not all the sexual assaults that happen.
He wants to improve the system. His idea, a group from within the community that would take a closer look at how his agency investigates sexual assault cases.
To actually take the cases that have been either resolved or have been closed and just kind of do a quality control look at those cases to see if there's anything that we could have done differently, could have done better.
Whether anything changes, whether the system improves, there are survivors who feel it already failed them.
The policy's wrong because they did nothing for me. At least that's how I feel.
We're going to follow up with Chief Mullen to see if he's able to put that group in place that would review sexual assault cases. We're also going to continue to track those cases where survivors feel their schools let them down. Well, no matter where an attack happens, no matter who the survivor is, the path to justice is a challenging one. Even the people responsible for helping bring that justice admit the system is broken. Right now in the South Carolina State House, there are at least 12 pieces of legislation waiting to be debated that would offer new protections to victims. Amanda Crawford spoke to leaders and survivors who are fighting for change.
I didn't like looking at myself in the mirror.
You feel like you're nothing, that everything you went through doesn't matter at all.
Seeking justice after a rape can feel like torture to the survivor.
I really just wanted to be dead. I just didn't care for anything.
For Kira, the process was infuriating.
It was someone that I knew. I went to college with him, so I've known him for years.
Even when a victim knows their attacker, that does not guarantee an arrest.
I want victims of sexual assault or survivors of sexual assault to know that they're supported, that South Carolina hears them, sees them, and has their back.
Representative Mandy Powers-Norrell has introduced nearly a dozen bills, all advocating for survivors' rights in one way or another. In her eyes, the biggest problem, there's no definition of consent in South Carolina.
I don't think that it's very productive for people to be walking around with everyone having their own idea of what consent means in their own minds.
She says without a clear definition, victims are open to unfair judgment.
To some people, consent can be inferred by what you're wearing, and that's clearly not the intent of the law.
We brought the question to Solicitor Walt Wilkins. He agrees and says a legal definition of consent would make it easier to prosecute rapists.
The next morning, one individual feels that she did not or he did not consent to whatever happened the night before. Is there a sexual assault? I have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that assault without consent took place against another individual.
Powers-Norell's bill to define consent didn't make it out of committee in the 2019 session. She and other advocates hope to see it move further next year. But there are other obstacles in a rape case.
For me, the most difficult part of prosecuting a rape case is having to put a victim, especially a child victim, there in the same room with the person who assaulted them and having to almost re-assault them through that process.
We sat down with South Carolina's Attorney General Alan Wilson. He says confronting the attacker is a necessary evil if a survivor wants justice.
It takes so much courage not only to endure the initial assault, but then to go through the criminal justice system.
Some would like to see that change. Solicitor Wilkins tells us, in some cases, the victim shouldn't have to be in the courtroom.
We find that that's a pretty decent barrier to a successful testimonial given by a victim. If there's a way that they can watch it through video, but still comply with the Sixth Amendment and their right to confront through their lawyer, would be extremely helpful.
Wilkins adds one of the biggest challenges is the time it takes to try a sexual assault case.
The waiting is something that is a systemic issue that we're all trying to address. I would love to see a conversation about mandatory trial requirements for sexual abuse cases.
Many factors can complicate a rape case, and some victims will never get answers. Kira's attacker was never arrested.
There's nothing we're gonna do. It would just be this is just a he said, she said case.
She wants to see the system change, and her message to other survivors, don't give up until it does.
To just fight back. Don't stand down from things. Don't be afraid. Whether it's criminal justice or just justice for your heart and yourself, you find that and you fight for that.
Even for a survivor who sees their attacker put behind bars, justice doesn't come quickly.
The waiting is the worst part.
Next on Chronicle, why the process takes so long and why the wait never ends for so many.
The fight for justice is difficult, but survivors tell us the wait is excruciating. A WYFF News 4 investigation revealed more than 1,800 untested rape kits in South Carolina. Hundreds more cases pending at crime labs in the state. Whether survivors are waiting for an update on the evidence, an arrest, or a verdict, many say that chapter has impacts that last a lifetime.
You have to fight every day to love yourself. Every day.
Sarah's world changed 3 years ago, the day she was raped.
I fought with every ounce of strength I had. I was so tired. But the more I screamed, the harder he hit me.
She reported the attack right away. Investigators collected their evidence at the hospital and then sent Sarah home.
The waiting is the worst part. I wanted answers. And I wanted somebody to say whether it was a good answer or a bad answer. Just tell me yes, tell me no. Just don't tell me I don't know.
Sarah felt hopeless and confused, waiting for an update from police. Other victims are forced to wait for their investigation to even begin. We've discovered there are thousands of rape kits in South Carolina that have not been tested.
Right now, by doing nothing, it's sending a very clear message to survivors that what happened to them doesn't matter and that their cases don't matter. And it's sending a very clear message to offenders, hey, it's okay, you can do it again.
Ilsa Connect is with Joyful Heart Foundation. She's advocating for change. She says each victim deserves to know where their evidence is and what investigators are doing.
It should not depend on your zip code whether or not your rape kit gets sent for testing and how quickly that happens. So that is why we're pushing statewide legislation.
She believes there should be one policy on testing rape kits across South Carolina. Greenville County Sheriff Johnny Mac Brown agrees.
That we process them, that we keep them, and that they are made known to the victim what is entailed in that.
We discovered Greenville County now tests all incoming rape kits, but there's still a backlog.
I want them to know that they're not forgotten, although they may be several months and years before the case is brought to to an end.
Sarah's ending came much quicker than most.
44 days later, the detective called.
They arrested her rapist, bringing closure, she says, but not peace.
The anger just kind of takes it all. And it doesn't feel at that point like anything is going to actually be justice for what was done to you.
Sarah's grateful her attacker is in prison, but she knows each untested rape kit in South Carolina represents someone else living in fear, still waiting for their ending.
Just don't give up. The longer you fight and the harder you fight, you may not get the justice that you hope for, but at least you know that you fought as hard as you could through it all.
Sarah's wait was made worse because she didn't know where her sexual assault kit evidence was in the process of being tested and analyzed. Many states give victims access to a tracking system that shows where that evidence is at all times. A system like that is still a proposal in South Carolina.
We've all got a story. We are all, if you decide to take that story and try to make change with it like I have, to see some results.
Change is happening in the way survivors of sexual assault are treated. Coming up on Chronicle, you're going to hear from the people leading that charge. Then, we'll explain what it takes to help a victim become a survivor.
Change, especially legislative change, is a difficult process. It's slow, it's cumbersome, it's frustrating, but Nigel Robertson explains it's happening in South Carolina, thanks to survivors of sexual assault who are leading the charge.
Roll call is required.
Sitting in the Judiciary Committee hearing and hearing each of those House members vote affirmatively for the bill, and watching Evelyn Mitchell's face and her body and just seeing that weight lifted from her shoulders was one of the most validating experiences of my career.
Shauna Galloway Williams spends every day fighting for survivors. She's the director of the Julie Valentine Center, and she's supporting survivor Evelyn Mitchell's push for reform in South Carolina.
Totally in shock we were. It's still not easy to bring this story out into the open, and then finding out that my rape kit had been destroyed in Kentucky, and then the new dose of strength I got when I realized, you know what, just because my rape kit's been destroyed, I can't give this fight up. I'm here to support this bill.
Mitchell stood before a House Judiciary Subcommittee to testify in support of Representative Gilda Cobb-Hunter's bill that would create a rape kit tracking system in South Carolina.
We have a problem in South Carolina with tracking rape kits. Now what? Passage of this legislation will address that.
The bill unanimously passed the House Judiciary Committee and then the full House. Now it is on hold. With the legislative session over, the Senate won't take up the bill again till 2020. Across the border, North Carolina already has a tracker.
Our tech guys took what Idaho developed and made it work for North Carolina.
Josh Stein is North Carolina's Attorney General. He's backing the reform effort in his state.
And since October 1, anytime there's a sexual assault, that gets entered into the system. So that one, we know how many kits there are, but because there's a tracking system, a barcode, we know where it is.
At the start of the reform process, Stein was shocked to find out his state was sitting on more than 15,000 untested rape kits.
That was 2 or 3 times what I had imagined it would be. They're just sitting on shelves of local law enforcement. We've got to get them off the shelf and into the lab where they can be tested, because we know this, when we test old kits, we solve cold cases.
Testing them all would require $6 million from the North Carolina legislature.
But in a $23 billion budget, when we know with certainty, if we outsource these kits, we will solve violent crimes and put criminals, rapists behind bars. It is money very well spent for the public safety.
Even if mandatory testing of kits becomes a reality in North Carolina, there will always be more work to do, especially in South Carolina, where no reform has passed.
So surely we can track these rape kits.
Something Evelyn Mitchell is on a mission to change.
Peace to the victims. I know we have a lot of work because we just did a lot of work. Law enforcement can focus on, but I'm even more determined than ever now.
Mitchell and the advocates at the Julie Valentine Center will reach out to South Carolina senators ahead of the 2020 session to explain the importance of the bill. We'll follow that legislation and the work the supporters are doing all the way through the process. Well, even as lawmakers work to bring change, victim advocates say there are great sources of help available right now. There are providers of hope for survivors of sexual assault and for their families.
So I felt completely alone.
Helplessness and hollowness.
I felt guilty for him. My husband was just, all he wanted to do was help me.
Survivors often say that these are the feelings that accompany them in the weeks, even months after the assault.
And he had no idea how to help me, nor did I know how to help myself.
Family members and loved ones want to help in some way, but all seem paralyzed from lack of knowledge on just how to move forward.
You're just by yourself. It's like you can talk to people, but nobody knows what you're going through.
Julie Valentine Center, this is Wendy. Can I help you?
But there are people who do know how to help survivors take those first steps toward healing. In the upstate, trained advocates from the Julie Valentine Center are among the first at the hospital, providing information to weave the initial threads together to create a network of support.
And I'm thankful for like JVC and everyone here who have given me the tools I need to know that I don't care how many times I say it, like nothing about it is my fault.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week for anyone, regardless of their age, their gender, their ethnicity, their socioeconomic background. We are available for everyone.
Free and confidential services support the victim, their family, and anyone in the community.
So we actually have a group that is very helpful to supporters of survivors, and it's called that, Supporters of Survivors. And what we do is we provide educational support and information for spouses, caregivers, partners, friends of individuals who have been assaulted.
This place, Julie Valentine, is a lifesaver. They don't judge you. They don't push you. They don't make you feel anything but loved here. They can help your families to understand how to help you.
Julie Valentine victim advocates also help survivors make their way through the legal labyrinth.
Navigating the criminal justice process, I can't even begin to imagine what that would be like without the assistance of victim advocates.
South Carolina's Attorney General believes that these victim advocates are so important to the system, he wants to create a plan that would assure that volunteers throughout the state have the same quality of training.
And I would like to see us have a victims service provider doctrine in which everybody is learning and training off the same policies and are equally funded and supported and staffed.
Folks at the Julie Valentine Center are equipped. This is what they do. They have trained people that deal with crime victims and survivors of sexual assault. So I can't place enough emphasis on their role.
Legal guidance, counseling, family support. Advocates say it is important to seek help no matter when the sexual assault occurred.
It is never too late to get support or help. We have individuals who come in at the age of 70, 75 who've never sought help before.
Like, you know it happened to you, so you fight for you. Find a crisis center like JVC. I would be nowhere without these people in this place, honestly.
Because the services offered at Julie Valentine Center are free to survivors, they do rely on the community for donations and for volunteers. Whether you want to help or need help, you can see that number for the center there at the bottom of your screen. You can also see the numbers for the South Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, as well as the National Sexual Assault Hotline. As you heard Shauna Galloway-Williams say, it is never too late to get help. Thank you for joining us for Chronicle, WYFF News 4 investigates surviving sexual assault. I'm Jane Rovelo. Goodbye.